Facebook found its way to me, Anita, and here we are through a DJ, doing another remix through another DJ, getting this incredible deal.
That was what made us different back in the 80s, is that we were strong women writing our own music, so it still stands up on its own 2 feet today.
All three of us have been through so much in our lives since the Zinana split up. I think it just makes you in life really know what really matters and what's really important. To be honest, I was a little bit dubious and thought, oh, I don't know if we should be doing this at our age, but Ruthie kept saying, oh, come on, what can we do? And that's the thing. When you're younger, you worry about what people think. But these days, I think, I'm going to be dead sometime soon. I might as well grab this.
You know, you're never too old to do anything anymore.
The newly successful girl band Zinana with their original 1980s track, Witches. A woman in Wales has gone viral on TikTok after CCTV footage showed her getting her coat caught on a shop front shutter and being hoisted in the air. Anne Hughes, who's 72, is the talk of not only her village, but of the world, after the video got more than 2 million views. Our reporter Andrew McNair has been telling me all about this rather uplifting story.
First things first, she is okay, and being hoisted nearly 3 meters in the air, it could have been anything but. Anne has been working as a cleaner at this local convenience store for years, and sort of being from this small village called Tonteg in South Wales, expecting overnight social media fame. But the footage posted online has given her exactly that. So here's what happened. She was leaning up against the shutters with her trolley when the owner, unbeknownst to her, starts to open the shop. So he raises the shutters and she gets caught on one of the hooks on her coat. The next thing she knows, she's hoisted right up in the air and finds herself dangling upside down from the waist. Absolutely nothing she can do about it, and it was all captured on CCTV. Anne has been speaking to the BBC.
When Ahmed, the owner of the shop, when he was inside bringing the shutters up, my coat had caught when I was going up. And then I screamed his name, and thank goodness he came out. My grandchildren have asked me, why are you holding on to your trolley? I said, I don't know.
Make no mistake, it's a very funny video. Big question, was Anne ready for this level of online fame?
Well, she must have been absolutely terrified, but her and her family have had a right laugh at this, as you might imagine. And as we've heard, the thing that's got many people talking is the fact that she was grabbing hold of her trolley and held on to it as she was dangling there. So her friends think that she looked ridiculous all round. Here's Wendy Barrett.
It's hysterical. I've known Anne for years. She's a very good friend of mine. And just to see her, well, it made my day yesterday.
And for the shop owner, Ahmed, it's possibly the best marketing campaign that a local shop has ever had. So in the end, a happy news story, because she made it out alive.
Andrew McNair. Earlier in the Happy Pod, we were talking about rare and unusual languages. Australia used to be one of the most linguistically diverse places, with over 200 languages. But today, many of them are considered highly endangered. Enter Gilad Zuckerman, a Hebrew-speaking linguistics professor who's on a mission to help indigenous communities reclaim their mother tongues. Gilad has painstakingly pieced back together the dormant language of Bangla, which was spoken in South Australia, before presenting his work to the indigenous community for approval. Among them, Shania Richards. So where did Gilad begin?
I had a dictionary written in 1844 with up to 3,500 words, which is a lot.
He revelled in the delights of this language. Gilad refers to Bangla as a sleeping beauty.
So I asked 5 representatives of the Bangla tribe to come to my office, and I told these 5 Bangla representatives, I have found enough material to reclaim your dreaming, sleeping beauty. Are you interested? Their response changed my life because they told me, and I quote, "We have been waiting for you for 50 years.
The wait was over. Just a few months later, they planned the first language workshop with Gilad and members of the community.
The entire night, I was working like a dog, preparing songs, including the head, shoulders, knees, and toes in Bangla. Gaga, wiri, bura, idna, gaga, wiri, bura, idna.
Gilad's approach is for the community to be in charge of the revival of their language.
I need to make it clear, the Aboriginal people are at the wheel. They're the ones who have to approve of any decision that I make. In fact, I don't make decisions, I make recommendations.
I remember like the first time I met Professor Gilad, he was the one that really helped us heaps with our language revival.
When Shania was a teenager and struggling with her mental health, she went to a newly set up Bangla Community Centre.
I was so spun out because it was like he was one of those heroes from the books that came around. They were like, hey, you know you're allowed to be yourself?
She went to a Bangla language workshop, learning songs in the language and reading books.
It was like he understood and he saw how much we needed to find this so that we can find ourselves again, not only just as individuals, but as a collective and hopefully for the whole community.
For Shania, there's no question about the impact it's had for her.
Coming back to find my people again, my culture and my language, is literally like I found myself through language again. Because now I feel like I have a purpose, even if it's as simple as being able to learn a new Bangla word per day.
Shania has come a really long way since she was a teenager, and she's now an elected politician in the region. She's also writing a book of Bangla poems and wants to record an album of Bangla songs. But for Shania, the biggest
transformation for me to now actually being the person I've always dreamed of becoming.
Shania Richards ending that report by Josephine Casserly. For more on this and stories like it, search online for BBC World Service People Fixing the World or wherever you get your BBC podcasts. You may remember a few weeks ago we told you about the adventures of an escaped monkey in Scotland. Honshu, a Japanese snow monkey, escaped from a wildlife park in the Scottish Highlands and became the subject of a major search operation involving drones and monkey-catching rangers. Honshu was safely found, but his story did not end there. With a recap and an important update, here's Callum Leslie.
Hello, this is the story of the Scottish macaque. At the Highland Wildlife Park, up near Kincraig, an adventurous monkey had an exciting few days. His name was Honshu, a Japanese macaque, and this is the story of how he escaped and came back. Now, Japanese macaques sometimes like a scrap, which can leave knees bloody and make eyes black. But Honshu didn't really fit in. He was a sensitive soul. He preferred reading books or listening to music on his own. It all got too much when one fateful night he got fed up with his troop after a really big fight. So he hopped a fence and channeled William Wallace, yelling freedom as he ran off to the forest. His heart was racing, but he found he wasn't all that scared. He was curious and excited about the big world out there. The Highlands were beautiful. The Cairngorms stopped him in his tracks. He decided right then that he wasn't Japanese anymore. Now he was a Scottish macaque. He wanted to see Ben Nevis and Loch Ness too. He wanted to eat the tatty scone and drink iron brew. As he explored, his fame grew and grew. People loved the story of the Scottish monkey on the loose from the zoo. He popped up in gardens, in wee Scottish towns, and was having a great time cutting around. But The people at the wildlife park wanted him to come home, as Scotland in February was too cold for him to be on his own. They were worried about Honshu and hoped he'd come back, and a man named Ben searched with drones and made monkey maps. After 5 days, they found him in a garden eating Yorkshire puds. And the adventure was over, but not quite for good. He went back to the park, but things stayed the same. The other macaques didn't let him join in their monkey games. So the people at the park, they came up with a plan to make him much more happy, so he wouldn't want to run away again. They asked him if he'd like to go to Edinburgh Zoo. He thought for a moment Edinburgh seemed far, big and new, but then he remembered how he felt on that fateful night, and how things that seem at first scary can still be alright. So he plucked up his courage and said he would go. He was excited about new places to see, new things to know. And as it turns out, everyone was excited to see him too, and people came from all around to visit him at the zoo. He hoped he could see more of Scotland one day, go to Stirling Castle and the Spaghetti Hut to watch Livingston play, get a big bag of chips from Karen Fish Bar, play golf at St Andrews, and try to break par. So this is a story for anyone who thinks they don't fit in. Maybe you're just waiting for your adventure to begin. There are people out there who will appreciate you for you, just like there were for the Scottish macaque, the famous Honshu.
Head of Monkey Business and poet Callum Leslie. We love it when he hangs around with us. You've been listening to The Happy Pod from the BBC World Service. It's been a joy to hear from our listener Amy in this episode. As always, you can send us an email with a message, a story, something that made you smile. Our address is globalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. This edition was mixed by Craig Kingham. The producer was Anna Murphy. The editor is Karen Martin. I'm Harry Bly. Until next time, goodbye.
This is the BBC World Service reporting on the impact of sand mining in Cambodia.
The Mekong River is being dredged for sand to fuel Cambodia's construction boom, and that comes at a cost.
In the last 5 years, I used to have a lot of fish, but now I cannot catch fish anymore.
Join me, Robin Markwell, as I assess the environmental and human impact.
Running out of sand, Saturday at 12 GMT. In half an hour, Crowd Science with Caroline Steele.
We're investigating colour. What affects the way we see the colours of the world? Is your blue sky the same as mine? And does the colour of our eyes make a difference?
Stay with us. The newsroom is next. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
At 2 o'clock GMT, this is the newsroom with Nigel Adderley. We have the latest on the winners and losers from the Academy Awards in Los Angeles shortly, and also analyse the situation in Haiti, with the country in the grip of gang violence.
With the looting of the port and the fact that the airport also is no more operational, it is anticipated that food will be a big problem in the coming days.
Global news agencies pull an official photograph of the Princess of Wales and her children, amid claims it has been manipulated. And we report on the consequences of widespread forgeries in the Russian art market.
Public money is spent to acquire things for museums. This is our historical record, and if we allow this to happen, we're destroying our own past.
And in sport, a classic encounter in the Premier League between Liverpool and Manchester City ends all square. You're listening to the BBC World Service. First, the top stories.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Several leading news agencies, including Reuters and the Associated Press, have retracted a photograph of the Princess of Wales and her 3 children, saying it appears to have been digitally manipulated. The photo was the first of Princess Catherine to be released by Kensington Palace since she had surgery in January. Graham Satchell reports.
It was thought the picture would quell online speculation and conspiracy theories about the princess's health, but the world's leading picture agencies, who distribute images to media outlets, have now issued what they call a kill notification and have withdrawn the photograph. The agency's concern centres around the left sleeve of Princess Charlotte's cardigan, which they say looks as if it's been edited. It's thought to be the first time agencies have pulled an official photograph from the palace. Kensington Palace itself has declined to comment.
The leader of Portugal's governing Socialist Party, Pedro Nuno Santos, has admitted defeat in Sunday's parliamentary election and congratulated the centre-right Democratic Alliance. With 98% of the votes counted, the Democratic Alliance have secured 77 seats in Parliament, 2 more than the Socialists. The snap election was held after the Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, resigned amid a corruption investigation involving members of his staff. Alison Roberts in Lisbon has the latest.
The governing Socialists admitted defeat at the hands of the right-of-centre Democratic Alliance, even though 4 seats based on the votes of Portuguese citizens living abroad won't be allocated for a few days. But the big takeaway from this snap election was a surge in support for the far right, with the Chega party taking 18% of the vote after a campaign largely focused on the issue of corruption. The leader of the Democratic Alliance, Luis Montenegro, said during the campaign that he wouldn't do deals with Chega, describing it as xenophobic and racist, and he reiterated his pledge after the results came through. Portugal's president is expected to hold him to that, and it's unclear how Mr. Montenegro would govern for long without the votes of Chega.
Germany says it has evacuated its embassy staff from Haiti, along with other European Union diplomatic representatives, as the country descends into gang violence. Earlier, the United States withdrew non-essential staff. Will Grant reports.
Haiti is fast descending into anarchy. Over the past few nights, the violence in the capital, Port-au-Prince, has ramped up once again. Heavily armed groups attacked the National Palace and set part of the Interior Ministry on fire with Molotov cocktails. It comes after a sustained attack on the international airport, which remains closed to all flights, including one carrying the Prime Minister, Ariel Henry. He recently attempted to fly back to Haiti, but his plane was refused permission to land and was also turned away from the neighbouring Dominican Republic. He's now stuck in Puerto Rico, unable to return to the nation he ostensibly leads.
World News from the BBC. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has criticised Pope Francis's remarks that Kiev should have the courage to negotiate an end to the war with Russia. He dismissed it as a distant assessment.
When the Russian evil started this war, all Ukrainians stood up. Christians, Muslims, Jews, everyone. I thank every Ukrainian chaplain who is with the army. They are on the front line, protecting life and humanity. This is what the church is. It is together with people, not 2,500 kilometers away.
The Pope's comments have caused uproar in Ukraine. The Vatican spokesman clarified that the Pope didn't mean outright surrender, but an end to hostilities through negotiations. A new report says Europe must prepare for catastrophic threats as climate change increasingly hits every part of the economy and society. The EU Environment Agency warns that most of the 36 listed climate risks could hit critical or catastrophic levels in the coming decades, without more urgent action from policymakers. It predicts economic losses from coastal floods alone could exceed $1 trillion annually by the century's end. The agency's director said the report should be the final wake-up call. The European Commission will respond on Tuesday. The British government has pledged $150 million over the next 4 years to boost protection for the country's Muslim population. It says the funding will bolster security at mosques and provide reassurance that anti-Muslim abuse won't be tolerated. An Oscar winner has told the Academy Awards ceremony in Hollywood he wished he'd never had to make his film. It came from the Ukrainian director Mstislav Chernov, whose 20 Days in Mariupol, about the city's brutal siege, won Best Documentary Feature. In other awards, Da'Vine Joy Randolph won Best Supporting Actress with her performance in The Holdovers, and Robert Downey Jr. got Best Supporting Actor for his role in Oppenheimer, which is predicted to win the biggest prizes of the night. BBC News.
2:06 GMT, you're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service with me, Nigel Adderley. And we start in Los Angeles, where the film industry's biggest night of the year is currently underway. Hollywood stars have gathered at the Dolby Theatre for the Oscars, and our correspondent David Willis is in LA. And David, in the last few minutes, this has really become Oppenheimer's night.
It has indeed, Nigel, and we've just seen Christopher Nolan, British director, accepting his Academy Award for Oppenheimer. He's one of the premier blockbuster directors of his generation. Many people here think he's been nominated once before for Dunkirk back in 2018, but this is his first Oscar victory. He beat Martin Scorsese and Yorgos Lanthimos in that category, and just before that we saw the star of his film Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy, become the first Irish-born actor to walk off with that award for his depiction of J. Robert Oppenheimer, and he, who is the star of course of the TV show Peaky Blinders, dedicated his award to what he called the peacemakers everywhere. Now, by my Oppenheimer on 5 awards so far, the others being original score, cinematography and film editing, as well as best supporting actor for Robert Downey Jr. Poor Things, the Yorgos Lanthimos movie, has 3, makeup, production design, costume design, and The Zone of Interest has 2, best international feature film and best sound.
But Barbie so far has been overlooked in the majority of the nominations for it.
It has indeed, and there were a lot of jokes about that from the host Jimmy Kimmel, as you can imagine, Nigel, going into this, because there were snubs as they were seen for Greta Gerwig, the director, and for Margot Robbie, the star of Barbie. Nonetheless, it did have 8 nominations going in to these Oscars. It does seem to have been a rather poor night for Barbie. The Academy really hasn't taken that film terribly seriously, it would seem, despite the fact that it netted getting on for, well over $1 billion at the box office, and between it and Oppenheimer brought in $2.4 billion.
And there was also some pro-Palestinian protesters outside the ceremony, and there was a brief delay right at the start.
That's right, absolutely. There were hundreds of protesters who delayed the start of this year's ceremony, and apparently there were some clashes or some rather tense moments involving the Los Angeles Police Department and some of those about 1,000 protesters who backed up the arrival of A-listers on the red carpet, with many of them actually having to abandon their vehicles and walk to the Dolby Theatre. Among them, Lily Gladstone, who was nominated for lead actress, and she was spotted leaving her vehicle and riding a golf cart to the theatre, Nigel.
Thank you to David Willis. You can follow the Oscars minute by minute on the BBC website at bbc.com, and we will have more in our next programme, which comes up at 4 o'clock GMT. With daily life on the island of Haiti descending into chaos, Caribbean leaders have called for an emergency meeting on Monday to address what they describe as the country's dire situation. This follows a sudden growth in gang violence and a breakdown of law and order. EU diplomats are reported to have left, as have essential US embassy staff who were airlifted out on Sunday. With a state of emergency still in force and main roads out of the capital, Port-au-Prince, closed, a senior UN official in the city, Philippe Blanchard, has warned of food shortages.
For months already, food has been an issue with inflation and difficulty to reach access to food. But with the looting of the port and the fact that the airport also is no more operational, it is anticipated that yes, food will be a big problem in the coming days.
Our reporter Luis Fajardo is monitoring developments from Miami, and he told us the latest.
The situation throughout the weekend has continued to deteriorate. There is several reports of fighting in strategic areas of the capital, of the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, and the situation does not seem anything closer to improving. Of course, there's going to be some attention on the meeting tomorrow, meeting on Monday, between the leaders of the Caribbean region, the CARICOM, trying to find more solutions to this region.
But how much progress could they make?
It's hard to say. I guess at this point, in a desperate situation for Haiti, they'll be looking for help from any possible source. However, the Caribbean countries have been trying for several days to help some sort of a transition or a power-sharing government, and they have not been lucky at all. So I think there's also going to be a lot more interest in the role the U.S. might be continuing to play in this situation. The Secretary of State Blinken had met with the government of Kenya, with President Ruto of Kenya, trying to see how they can advance with the planned deployment of a multinational security force that might stabilize the situation in Haiti.
And there have been growing demands from the gang leaders for the Prime Minister Ariel Henry to step down. Is that realistic?
Well, they have been doing that for several days, trying to convince him to step down. Mr. Henry does not seem to be looking into that direction. Also, he has received pressure from many other parts to go in that direction. Even the U.S. government has suggested that his situation is very difficult to maintain. People would also argue that if Mr. Henry was to return to Haiti, he would face not only an incredibly difficult political situation, but even a personal safety situation, as the breakdown in law and order has continued. So many people would wonder if he would be so interested in keeping the post, but at this moment he has not given any indication he's ready to move aside. He's still in Puerto Rico apparently, and trying to get back to his country to see what role he can play in this crisis.
Louis Fajardo. Earlier, we reported on a photograph released by the British royal family of Princess Catherine, who'd been out of the public eye since Christmas, fueling online speculation about her health. But now, just hours later, several of the world's largest picture agencies have withdrawn the photo because of fears it had been manipulated. Caroline Aston, a Royal Affairs journalist, gave us her assessment.
It was all going so well, wasn't it? This lovely photograph issued on Mother's Day showing a smiling Princess Catherine surrounded by her children, until some eager-eyed royal watchers noticed there were some strange angles and a little bit of arm missing, it would appear, near the wrist. And of course it is going to be an absolute gift, isn't it, to conspiracy theorists. There have been all sorts of stuff out there about what exactly is going on with the Princess of Wales. So anything that adds grip to that mere conjecture and conspiracy is, you know, big news. And of course agencies are quite right. If you publish pictures, they have to show the truth. And if you tweak anything, you're bound to fan the flames of the fire of debate. Why has it been tweaked? What's happened to this photograph? They may well issue one of their short, carefully crafted statements covering the fact that the picture had been altered in some way, but what are they going to tell us? Why was it altered? Who altered it? There's a lot of information here that we don't know yet.
Caroline Aston. 2:14 GMT, you're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. The start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan has intensified the focus on what happens in Gaza, where there's very limited access to food and clean water. And with Israel's offensive continuing there are increasing efforts to get aid into the territory. What happens in Gaza is having repercussions around the world. Earlier, we heard about the protests at the Oscars. In the Netherlands, hundreds have demonstrated against a visit by the Israeli president for the inauguration of a museum commemorating the Holocaust. Isaac Herzog is being accused of complicity in a genocide, an allegation he and the Israeli government strongly deny. Here's our Europe regional editor, Danny Abraham.
The inauguration of the Dutch National Holocaust Museum could hardly have come at a more charged time. Looming over events was the shadow of the Gaza conflict. A diverse crowd of protesters, a number of them Jewish, gathered nearby to denounce the invitation of President Herzog. Jews Against Genocide read some placards. Demonstrators chanted a phrase deployed later, but in a very different sense, by Mr. Herzog.
Never again is now! Never again!
There were calls for Mr. Herzog to be arrested and judged at the International Criminal Court in The Hague.
The prosecutor of the ICC, this is your job! It is your job to make sure that the President of Israel is being arrested today!
Many protesters emphasised they were not demonstrating against the museum itself. It commemorates those killed in the Second World War by the Nazis during an occupation that lasted from 1940 to 1945. The vast majority were Jewish, but some victims were Roma and Sinti. 3/4 of Dutch Jews were killed, more than 100,000 people, most after having been deported to concentration camps. It was a higher proportion than any other occupied country in Western Europe. The Dutch king, Willem-Alexander, spoke at the main ceremony in a synagogue near the museum, attended by Holocaust survivors and their relatives. He said the new institution was about more than recounting the stories of those murdered and cut loose from society decades ago.
Het is aan ons allemaal om te voorkomen dat antisemitisme...
It is up to all of us to prevent anti-Semitism from leading to a hurricane that blows away everything we hold dear. Let us never forget the Nazi Sobibor concentration camp in Poland started here in our Vondelpark with a sign, Jews forbidden. There is no excuse for ignorance.
Mr. Herzog made similar remarks.
This institution sends a clear, powerful statement. Remember the horrors born of hatred, anti-Semitism and racism, and never again allow them to flourish. Unfortunately, never again is now, right now. Because right now, hatred and anti-Semitism are flourishing worldwide.
The Israeli president also called for the immediate release of Jewish hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Lyrics from the Dutch singer-songwriter who played at the ceremony, Douwe Bob, seem to have echoes of a polarised day.
These are bittersweet days, and it's hard if you don't know, child. These are bittersweet days.
Afterwards, the king was booed when he arrived at the museum itself for a tour. Outside, tensions rose. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators berated a smaller group of people waving Israeli flags. Some also climbed on and jostled police vans. Officers responded with tear gas. A day that should have unified people left many on both sides with a bitter taste in the mouth.
These are uncertain times. These are uncertain times. These are uncertain times.
A massive rescue operation is underway in the Swiss Alps after 6 skiers went missing on Saturday. Police in the town of Zermatt, where the group set off from, say efforts to find them will continue overnight. They went missing close to the famous Matterhorn. Stephanie Zachariason reports.
The group, consisting of 5 family members from Valais and another person from the town of Fribourg, left Zermatt early Saturday morning with the aim of reaching Arolla later the same day. It's along the famous Haute Route, considered one of the most scenic ski traverses in the world, suitable only for experienced skiers. But when the group didn't arrive at their destination, a family member who had come to pick them up alerted the authorities. Late Saturday afternoon, a member of the group managed to contact the emergency services themselves, allowing their location to be more clearly pinpointed at approximately 3,500 meters above sea level. But with a storm raging in the valley and a high risk of avalanches, helicopters have been prevented from reaching the area. Valais police have urged people to take great caution after several avalanches that have forced some roads to close. The rescue services say there is a good chance the missing skiers can survive, despite temperatures of below 16 degrees Celsius and winds of up to 80 kilometers an hour, if they have managed to dig themselves a snow hole. The hope now is that the weather will clear, allowing the rescue helicopters to fly.
Stephanie Zachariason. Time now for the latest sport. Here's Paul Serres.
A second-half penalty from Alexis McAllister and a point for Liverpool in their top-of-the-table clash with Manchester City in the English Premier League. The BBC's football correspondent John Murray reports from Anfield.
It was a pulsating match between these two modern heavyweights of the Premier League. It was the reigning champions Manchester City who carried the greater threat in the first half, and it was they who took the lead from a perfectly worked corner that was forced in at the near post by John Stones. But Liverpool took the match back to City in the second half, equalised early from a McAllister penalty after goalkeeper Ederson cleaned out Nunez. He was injured in the process. Replacement City keeper Ortega was called on to make saves. Diaz couldn't take big chances. There was a Liverpool penalty claim right near the end, but at the other end, Doku came so close to swinging it back City's way when shooting against a post. But the net result? Both matches between them this season have ended 1-1.
The Manchester City and England defender Kyle Walker says the match was a tactical battle.
With these teams, it's a chess game. Who's going to make that move or make that mistake, which then the other team's going to capitalise on. But listen, we'll take a point. We'll take a point definitely. Move on. Big FA Cup weekend next weekend, and then international break, and it's the running, and that's what you want to be involved in, you know, three horse race, you know, going for it.
Elsewhere, Tottenham thrashed Aston Villa 4-0 away from home to move within 2 points of the top 4. West Ham came from 2-0 down to deny struggling Burnley a rare victory in a 2-2 draw at the London Stadium. Nottingham Forest remained 3 points outside the relegation zone after losing 1-0 at Brighton. Away from the English Premier League, in France, Ligue 1 leaders Paris Saint-Germain were held to a 2-2 draw by Reims at the Parc des Princes. Elsewhere, there were wins for Monaco, Metz and Marseille. In Italy, Juventus were held to a 2-2 draw by Atalanta in Turin. Milan moved above Juve and up to second in the table behind Inter with a 1-0 win over Empoli. In Spain, the league leaders Real Madrid thrashed Celta Vigo 4-0 in the capital, with the 19-year-old Turkish international Arda Güler scoring his first goal for the club. And in Germany, Bayer Leverkusen re-established a 10-point lead at the top of the Bundesliga with a 2-0 win over Wolfsburg. On to rugby union, and Wales remained without a win in this year's Six Nations.